His duty was to guard the gate of men in his turn. The Portophorus was now able, after showing his devotion, to proceed to the second degree. Following a prolonged fast, he was taken into a dark chamber called Endymion, the Invitation Grotto. He was now of the degree of Neocorus. Handsome women brought him dainty food. They were the wives of the priest, who endeavored to excite his love. If he resisted these advances, he was further lectured by the master of ceremonies, and led into an assembly, where the stolista, or water-bearer, poured water over him. Then a living serpent was thrown at him. The whole room was full of snakes to test his courage. He was then led to 2 high pillars, between which stood a griffin driving a wheel before him. The pillars symbolized east and west, the griffin the sun, and the wheel of 4 spokes the 4 seasons. He was taught the use of the level and instructed in geometry and architecture. He received a rod entwined by serpents, and that rod is still used today by the medical community. It's called the caducus. And he received the password Heve, meaning serpent, and was told the story of the fall of man. The sign consisted in crossing the arms over the chest, and his duty was to wash the pillars. Now, when the initiate was initiated into the 3rd degree, the member was given the title of Melanophorus. He was led to an anteroom, over whose door was written, Gate of Death. The room was full of copies of embalmed bodies and coffins. Here, too, were a number of dissectors, embalmers, and so on. In the center stood the coffin of Osiris. The Melanophorus was asked if he had had a hand in the assassination of his master. On his denying the question, he was seized by 2 tapaxites, or men who buried the dead, and led into a hall where he found all the other Melanophores clothed in black. The king himself, who always was present on these occasions, addressed him in an apparently friendly way, begging him, if he did not feel courage enough to undergo the test now to be applied to him, to accept the golden crown he was offering him. Well, he had already been coached to refuse the crown and tread it underfoot. At this insult, the king called for revenge. Raising his sacrificial axe, he touched the head of the initiate. And in one famous initiation, the king actually beheaded the man. The 2 corpse carriers threw him on the ground, and the embalmers wrapped him in bandages. All who were present wept. Now he was led to a gate over which was written, Sanctuary of the Spirits. Now the initiate was not supposed to be beheaded in that one famous initiation, and I don't know what they chalked that up to. Now, standing before the gate, the initiate waited. On its being opened, thunder and lightning struck the apparently dead man. Charon received him as a spirit into his boat and carried him to the judges of Hades. Pluto sat on his judgment seat, while Rhadamanthus and Minos, as well as Aethon, Nicreus, Alastor, and Orpheus, stood beside him. Very severe questions were put to him as to his former life, and finally he was sentenced to remain in these subterranean vaults. Now remember, this is an initiation, which sometimes lasts for months and even years. The bandages were removed, and he was told never to desire blood, never to leave a corpse unburied, and to believe in the resurrection of the dead and the judgment to come. Now remember, this is long centuries before Christianity. He was taught coffin decoration and the peculiar hierogrammatical script. The sign was an embrace to express the days of wrath. He was kept in these underground chambers until thought fit to proceed to a higher degree. These, quote, days of wrath, unquote, generally lasted for a year and a half, until the initiate was ready for promotion to the 4th degree. The Battle of the Shades. He was handed a sword and a shield and taken through dark passages. He met certain persons presenting a frightful appearance, carrying torches and serpents. He was attacked with the cry of "Panis!" He defended himself bravely, but was always taken prisoner. His eyes were bandaged and a cord placed around his neck. Dragging him into a hall, the specters disappeared. He was led into the assembly of initiates and his eyes unbandaged. Before him he saw a magnificent hall decorated with beautiful paintings. The king and the highest dignitary, the demiurgos, were present. All were wearing their alidai, an Egyptian order composed of sapphires. Among those present were the secretary, the treasurer, and the master of feats. The orator made a speech congratulating the new member on his fortitude. He was given a drink called sais, which he drank to the dregs. And this was probably the ritual drink of honey or milk, water, wine, and gruel, and perhaps some hypnotic drug. He donned the boots of Anubis, took up the shield of Isis, put on the cloak and cap of Orcus. He was handed a sword and told that he must cut off the head of the next person he met in a cave and bring it back to the king. This cave was pointed out to him. Entering it, he saw what seemed to be a beautiful woman, but in reality was a model of one. Now notice it's a woman. He seized this by the hair and severed the head. This he brought back to the monarch, who praised him, telling him that he had symbolically won the head of the Gorgon, wife of Typhon, who had caused the death of Osiris. He was now permitted always to wear the dress which had been given to him, and he was entered in a book as one of the judges of the land. Notice that, one of the judges of the land. He was able to communicate at any time with the king and received an allowance from the court. He was invested with an order, that of Isis in the shape of an owl, and it was revealed to him that the secret name of the great lawgiver was Joa, Joa, which was also the password of this degree. But the password for the meetings of the Christophori, as the 4th degree initiates were called, was Sassicus. The 5th degree, that of Balahate, could not now be refused to the Chrysophorus, if he demanded or requested it. He was led to a hall to watch a play, at which he was the only onlooker. Other members of the degree went through the hall, as if looking for something. One drew his sword, and the terrible figure of Typhon appeared. Of course he was slain. And now the Dew Balahate was told that Typhon represented fire, a terrible element which was at the same time indispensable. The password was Chimia, and the teaching was in chemistry or alchemy. In order to become an astronomer of the Gate of the Gods, the 6th degree, the candidate was taken to the hall of assembly, bound and led to the gate of death. He was shown corpses which had been cast into water, and warned that he might be similarly treated if he broke his oath. He was given some teaching in astronomy and taken back to the Gate of the Gods, where he looked at the pictures of the gods while their histories were explained to him. A priestly dance took place, symbolizing the course of the heavenly bodies. He saw a list of members of the order throughout the world and learned the password Ibis for watchfulness. The last and the highest degree was that of Propheta, in which all secrets were laid bare. It was conferred following public processions, and when the permission of the king and all the highest members had been obtained, The members secretly left the city by night, and retired to some houses built in a square and surrounded by pillars, by the sides of which were placed alternately a shield and a coffin, whose